Level 1. Trainee. You don't touch a single plane for the first 6 months. You sit in a classroom in Oklahoma City at the FAA Academy and you stare at diagrams of airspace that look like someone drew circles inside circles inside circles and then added more circles. Your instructor explains what a sector is. You write it down. He explains it again, differently. You write that down too. There are 34 people in your class. By the end of the first week, 2 of them are already gone. Nobody makes a big announcement. Their chairs are just empty on Monday morning and nobody talks about it. The washout rate for air traffic control training is somewhere around 50%, depending on who you ask. The FAA doesn't advertise this number prominently. You find it yourself on a forum at 11 p.m. the night before your first exam, and you close the tab immediately. The curriculum covers everything: meteorology, federal aviation regulations, aircraft performance, radar systems, phraseology, which is its own entire language that you have to speak fluently under pressure in real time, while simultaneously tracking multiple moving objects and making decisions with about 4 seconds to think. You practice on simulators. The simulator is not real, but the stress is completely real. Your instructor watches you and says nothing while you work. The silence is its own kind of pressure. You fail your first radar exam. Not catastrophically, but enough. You retake it. You pass. Some of your classmates don't retake it. They go home. Some of them cry in the parking lot. Some of them just drive away. You don't know which is worse. You graduate the academy after 4 months. You think this means something. It means you are now allowed to go to an actual facility and begin training for real. The academy was the introduction. The real training starts now. You get assigned to a level 5 facility. That's the lowest complexity rating. A small regional airport, 2 runways, minimal traffic. Your supervisor tells you this is where you start, not where you stay. You nod. You don't fully believe him yet. Your first day at the facility, you sit behind a certified controller and watch. You are not allowed to speak on the frequency. You're not allowed to touch anything. You watch the certified controller work, and you try to understand what you're seeing, and mostly you understand about 40% of it. You go home and study until midnight. You come back the next day and understand 45%. This is how it goes for weeks. Level 2. Developmental controller. You're on position now. Supervised. A certified controller sits directly behind you with a headset plugged into the same frequency, ready to take over the second you hesitate too long or say the wrong thing or freeze. You know they're there. You never forget they're there. Their presence behind you is the only reason you're allowed to speak on the frequency at all. Your first transmission is to a Cessna 172 inbound for landing. You give him his sequence and his traffic and tell him to report a 3-mile final. Your voice comes out slightly higher than normal. The pilot reads it back correctly. You write down the readback time with a slightly shaking hand, and your supervisor behind you says nothing, which means you did it right. The job has a specific vocabulary and a specific rhythm, and if you break either one, the pilots notice immediately. A hesitation in your voice, a wrong word order, a frequency change given too early, these are the things that create confusion. And in this job, confusion is the first step towards something much worse. Month 3. You're working ground control at the small regional, taxiing aircraft around a quiet airport, 2 planes on the ground, 1 inbound, nothing complicated, and then a corporate jet requests pushback at the same time a regional turboprop is taxiing past his gate, and you clear the jet without seeing the turboprop, and your supervisor leans forward and takes the frequency. He fixes it in 12 words. Clean. No incident. No report filed. He doesn't yell at you. He doesn't need to. He just pulls his headset off and looks at you for a moment, and then puts it back on. You don't make that mistake again. The developmental phase can take anywhere from 1 to 3 years, depending on the facility complexity and how fast you certify on each position. You have to certify on every position in the facility, one by one. Ground, local, approach, departure. Each certification is a check ride. Each check ride can end your career. You study on your days off. You run through scenarios in your head in the shower. You dream about aircraft call signs. UA 2847 Heavy, turn left heading 270, descend and maintain 8,000. You wake up and lie there in the dark reciting readbacks. Your personal life takes note of this. Your girlfriend mentions that you were muttering in your sleep again. You tell her it's just a phase. It is not a phase. This is the job now. This is what the job does to the inside of your head. You certify on ground, then local, then approach. Each one takes months. Each one ends with a check ride where an evaluator watches you work a full session and decides whether you're safe to operate independently. The approach control check ride is the hardest thing you've ever done professionally. 45 minutes of moderate traffic with a go-around thrown in and a pilot who reads back the wrong altitude, and you have to catch it and correct it without breaking the rhythm of everything else happening simultaneously. You catch it. You pass. You are now a certified professional controller. It took you 2 years and 4 months. Some people do it faster. Some people never do it at all. Level 3. Certified Professional Controller. You work alone now. No supervisor behind you with a headset, no safety net. When a pilot calls you with a problem at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday with 3 other aircraft in your sector, it is entirely your problem, and the answer comes from you in the next 4 seconds, or the situation gets worse. The job has a physical feeling to it that people outside it don't understand. Not stress exactly, closer to a specific kind of concentrated alertness that lives in your chest and doesn't fully leave even when you go home. You are responsible for the physical separation of aircraft carrying hundreds of people, and the margin for error is measured in feet and seconds, and there is no undo button. Busy periods are called banks. When a bank hits and your sector fills up, the work becomes something close to a performance. You're issuing clearances and taking handoffs and coordinating with adjacent sectors and watching for conflicts and doing all of it out loud in a specific language at a specific pace while your hands move across the scope. Controllers who are good at this look calm from the outside. On the inside, the processing speed is something else entirely. You develop what controllers call the picture. It's not something you can explain to a non-controller. It's the ability to look at a radar scope full of data blocks and aircraft targets and see not just where everything is, but where everything is going to be in 2 minutes and 4 minutes and 8 minutes. You see the conflicts before they form. You build the sequence in your head 3 steps ahead and work backward to the present. The picture takes years to build. You can't rush it. Year 3 is a CPC, a wide-body inbound on a night approach, weather building to the west, a light aircraft that didn't file IFR suddenly climbing into your arrival corridor, and a military fast mover transiting your airspace on a practice approach that's running 30 seconds behind his filed time. All of this at the same time at 11 p.m. when you've been on position for 90 minutes. You handle it. Not perfectly. The wide body gets a longer vector than you wanted and adds 7 minutes to his arrival, but everyone is separated. Everyone lands. No incident report. You sit in the break room afterward and drink bad vending machine coffee and feel the specific quiet that comes after a hard session. Not pride exactly, something quieter than that. This is the job. This is what it actually is. Not the romanticized version, not the movie version. 90% of the time, it's routine work that requires complete attention, and 10% of the time, it's something that will test every bit of training you have. And the difference between those 2 percentages is not always obvious until you're already inside the 10%. You do this for years. The pay gets better. The seniority builds slowly. You start to know the facility the way you know your own house in the dark. Every runway configuration, every letter of agreement with adjacent facilities, every pilot who flies through your airspace regularly enough that you recognize his voice before he gives his call sign. Some of your colleagues burn out. It happens quietly. A controller who starts calling in sick more than usual. One who gets short with pilots on frequency in a way that wasn't there before. The job doesn't advertise what it costs to do it well for a long time. Some people find out the hard way. You find your rhythm. You work your shifts. You go home. You try to leave the picture at the facility. You mostly succeed. Level 4, Frontline Manager. You're not on position as much now. That's the first thing you notice. You spent years building the picture, years developing the feel of the frequency in your chest, and now you sit in an office doing staffing schedules and performance reviews and incident investigations and FAA compliance paperwork that seems designed specifically to consume the hours of the day that used to go toward actual controlling. You still certify, you still work position when staffing requires it, but the job has changed around you, and the change is permanent. You manage 12 controllers. They come to you with problems you remember having yourself. The developmental who keeps freezing on his approach check ride, the CPC who is burning out but won't admit it, the controller whose personal life is bleeding into his performance on frequency in ways that are small enough to ignore and large enough to matter. You make decisions about people now, not aircraft. This is harder. A controller comes to you 6 months into your FLM role with a report against him. A pilot filed a complaint about an instruction that he says created a conflict. You pull the tape, you listen to the frequency recording 3 times. The controller made the right call. The pilot misread the situation. You tell the controller he's fine. He exhales in a way that tells you he'd been carrying that for 2 weeks. 2 months later, a different situation, different controller. You pull the tape, and the tape tells a different story than the controller told you. You sit across from him in the office, and you say the things you have to say, and his face goes through several things, and then settles. You file the report. You have to. The FAA doesn't leave this discretionary. He doesn't speak to you in the break room for 3 months. You understand. You'd have done the same. The staffing situation at your facility is chronic. Air traffic control has a retirement wave coming that the FAA has been aware of for 20 years and addressed with the urgency of someone who has plenty of time. Your facility is 12 controllers short of full staffing. Your certified controllers are working mandatory overtime. Some of them are exhausted in a way that shows up in small ways on frequency that you watch carefully and say nothing about unless you have to. You manage it. You juggle the schedule, you push back on the overtime requirements where you can, and absorb them where you can't. Facility management above you wants metrics, on-time performance, operational error rates, staffing utilization numbers. You provide the metrics. You also know that behind the metrics are 12 people who are tired and doing the job anyway, and the numbers don't capture that. You're good at this job. You didn't expect to be. You took the FLM role because the pay increase was real and the seniority protection was real, and you told yourself you could always go back to full-time controlling if you hated it. You don't hate it. You're good at it. You stay. Level 5, Facility Chief. You run the facility now. A Terminal Radar Approach Control Facility, TRACON. You are responsible for the airspace of a major metropolitan area. Every aircraft that arrives or departs the primary airport and the 4 satellite airports in your area passes through airspace that your controllers manage under your watch. The controllers number 67. The airspace covers thousands of cubic miles. On a peak travel day, your facility handles over 2,000 aircraft operations. You haven't worked a full position session in 14 months. You still could. You maintain your certification. You go out on the floor occasionally and plug in for a session, and the controllers watch you in a way that is partly respect and partly curiosity. The chief working position. Some facilities chiefs never do this. You do it because you believe the people managing controllers should remember what it actually feels like to be one. The job at this level is almost entirely politics. FAA regional management, congressional staffing inquiries, noise abatement complaints from municipalities that sit under your arrival corridors, negotiations with airline operations centers who want preferential routing, budget cycles, union contracts. The operational side of the facility runs on the competence of your frontline managers and your CPCs and your developmentals. Your job is to make sure they have what they need and remove the things that get in their way. A runway incursion at one of your satellite airports. A ground vehicle crossed an active runway during a low visibility operation. No collision, no injuries, but a runway incursion is a serious event, and the FAA investigation lands on your desk and stays there for 4 months. You cooperate fully, You implement the corrective procedures. You brief your facility. You sit in front of a regional administrator and explain exactly what happened and what you've changed. The investigation closes. No enforcement action against the facility. You age approximately 3 years in those 4 months. There is a retirement wave coming. You've known this your entire career. Now you're the one managing it at the facility level. You have 8 controllers who will hit mandatory retirement age in the next 2 years. You have 4 developmental slots funded, and 2 of those developmentals are still 2 years from certification. The math does not work, and everyone in FAA management knows the math does not work, and the solution has been pending for longer than some of your youngest controllers have been alive. You work the problem every day with the tools you have. You request additional developmental slots, you submit the staffing justifications, you attend the regional meetings and make the case, and then go back to your facility and manage the gap with the people you have. Your controllers are good. They are tired, and they are good. A national news story runs about near misses in American airspace. Your facility is not mentioned. You watch the segment from your office and think about the 2,000 operations your team handled that day without incident, without a headline, without anyone knowing their name. You've been doing this for 31 years. Trainee to developmental to CPC to FLM to chief. The same airspace in different forms, the same fundamental problem. Keep the aircraft separated, get them where they're going, bring them home. You retire on a Thursday. No ceremony, you ask them not to. You clean out your desk, shake some hands, and walk out through the operations floor where 2 controllers are working arrivals on a busy afternoon bank. You stop for a moment and watch the scope. Data blocks moving, targets tracking, the picture building and rebuilding itself every few seconds the way it always has. You walk out into the parking lot and sit in your car and look at the facility building. 31 years, millions of operations, thousands of aircraft, hundreds of thousands of people who got where they were going and never knew your name and never needed to. You start the car. That was always the point.